I got the 3 leading edge skins that I cleaned up that were bare metal. Those got cleaned up and those got painted on the outside with some of the polyfiber epoxy paint. And the 3 false spars are all painted up nice and pretty on the outside. I'd painted them earlier, of course, with the DP40 on the inside surface. Got one nose rib here that is part of the landing light system there. That one kind of got set out of the way and didn't get painted with the rest of the wing. I cleaned it up with aluminum bright and all that stuff and got it pretty well nice and pretty, and then painted it with a little bit of the green. And then I've got the struts there that go out on the end of the wing. They're supports for the wingtip. Now there was 2 or 3 of those that were brand new or pretty new, but then there was the other ones just starting to get a little pitted. And so those cleaned up with the aluminum bright, and then that false rib goes underneath the fuel tank. There's 2 of those. One of those I got pretty good, and the other one I didn't get quite so good once I got to looking at it. It was really hard to see it in there, and I didn't get paint down in the channel of it like I had hoped. So I had a little bit of paint left over, and I repainted that today. And then I got that end rib down there, that butt rib. I had it painted with zinc phosphate primer, but I went ahead and painted it with polyfiber primer. Mainly wanted to get on the top rail there on the inside of that bay where the fabric gets glued down to it. And then that second rib this way, that on the end of the bay, I've got it cleaned up, painted on top of it too, where the fabric goes over it and glues down, so that should hold the glue. Well, anyway, I thought I had everything painted, that I needed to start putting everything back together, but I got to looking and I found another piece that I need to clean up and paint. And there's a fabric reinforcement or whatever, I don't remember what it's called, that goes there where that wing strut goes in there. The lift strut attaches. There's a bent piece of metal that goes in there, and that I'd stuck in the little tote where I've got all my parts and stuff. Stuck them in there to get them out of the way and to keep them together. I fished it out and I put it out with some rags around it with some paint thinner, because it was greasy and oily and dirty and had masking tape on it. Well, anyway, I've got it soaking out there to get it cleaned up. And then the other thing that I've got to finish cleaning up is that wingtip leading edge skin there. There's a special skin that goes over the wingtip leading edge, and that thing had about 5 pounds of Bondo on it. Well, I put some stripper on it and I've got most of it off of there. I'm going to need some body work on that. Instead of just filling the dents and dings in with body filler, I'm going to try to work it out a little bit so it doesn't take near as much body filler in there in that wingtip. And it looked like hell anyway. It looked like a bunch of rags stuffed underneath that red oxide primer. So the other thing that I've got to deal with is the landing light. I've got all the parts and stuff for it out in a basket with paint stripper on it. I was just out cleaning it up a little bit, and it's still going to take a little bit more to get all the paint off of it. But there's some pieces in there, the main bulkhead piece and a couple of other pieces in there that have the original paint on it that came from Piper, and the paint stripper won't even touch that stuff. So I'll get that cleaned up, see what it looks like after it gets cleaned up, and deal with it then. But most of the parts are getting cleaned up. They had a bunch of overspray paint and all kinds of crap on them, so I got to start on getting those cleaned up. I'll need to work them over a little bit more, put a little bit more stripper on them and put them back in the basket. So what I'm going to do now is work on these false spars. The flap and aileron hinges bolt up to the rear spar, but they also rivet into the false spars. Now, I don't know how much structural integrity the riveting into the false spars add. Those false spars are only 16 thousandths aluminum, so they're not real tough, but they might add some rigidity to it. But they've been kind of abused there. There was a little bit of corrosion around them, around each one of those openings where the aileron hinges go through there, and the same with the outward flap hinge. There's a little bit of corrosion around those. I got it all cleaned up and got it out of there, but I was kind of worried about it might not be strong enough to hold up, or it wouldn't hurt to have a doubler on those anyway. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to go ahead and figure those out, put doublers on those just around where the aileron hinges come out, And the two aileron false bars, I'll put the doublers on the outside because those hinges are all assembled, and the brackets for them where they attach into the false bars are welded on to the hinges themselves, to the tube that comes out for the hinge. The flap false bar there, I might put that on the inside of it because that bracket is loose and I have to figure out where it goes and to get it riveted on and everything. So that one I can put it on the inside. 16 thousandths might not make much of a difference, and that's what I was going to make those brackets out, or doublers out of. But it would make some difference. So if I put those on the outside, it's not going to make any difference on the two aileron false bars. And by putting it on the inside of the flap false bar, it'll be out of the way. And again, it won't make any difference there because I don't have the bracket attached to the hinge yet anyway. So I think that's what I'm going to work on next, is making up doublers for those false bars. This is the outboard aileron false bar, and this is the mount point right here for this aileron hinge. Goes in here right like that. Yeah, those holes all line up. So I laid out a patch, a doubler to go over this opening, and I cut it out. I made it a ½ inch wider than what the holes are in here, where the rivets go, a ½ inch above this top rivet and a ½ inch outside of either one of these two outside rivets. And then I had it go pretty close to a ½ inch down on the bottom. And that made that where'd my little scale go? Anyway, 3½ inches wide and 2 11/16 deep with a ½ inch bend right here. That's 16 thousandths metal. Well, I put the bend in it. I put a little arc in it here, bend in it with my 3-in-1 bender, the roller on it, and then I put a little bend in it here that's not quite 90 degrees. Well, that fits up pretty nice like that. I got to break the edges, clean up the edges of this. All right, now I got to fix this thing there somehow. Where I want it, I've got my lines marked on here on the outside of it, and this is where I'm going to put it here, is on the outside of this one, because as I said earlier, this is already fixed on there, and there's a little bit of adjustment. I could bend these tabs a little bit on there, I guess, but if I put it on the outside like this, that's going to be better. It's not going to make any changes or anything to anything. I don't think my side grips will fit on that. No, those aren't going to work on that at all. We'll have to figure something else out. That might be a little bit overkill. But it's going to work. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill out these holes for the number 4 rivets, and those are 1/8 inch. I'll put clecos in there, and that'll hold it in position for those. Right, now I don't need that clamp anymore. And I'm going to lay out a rivet pattern there for some number 3 rivets to nail this thing together with. And then once you get that done, then I'll take the plastic off this, deburr all the holes and everything. And I might put a little bit of zinc chromate primer on this. I still got some of this paint left. I could just finish these all up and then paint it with this primer. We'll see how it goes, see how long it takes to do it, and see if that primer is still viable. I've got it in a container right now, covered up with aluminum foil, and I put it in the refrigerator so it'll slow down its activation process. So, well, anyway, that's one, and that's the process that I'm going to go through. I'll do that for this one, and I'll do that for the inboard aileron false bar. Anyway, right now I'm going to lay out a nail pattern for this, a rivet pattern for this. And I've got a cut out this hole in here for the hinge to go through too. Alright, that gives me a pretty good rivet pattern there. There's going to be a hole in here, and then number 4 rivets here and here and here hold that down, so there's no point in doing any more than that. Oh, that gives me a good rivet pattern, I think. Right now I'm debating on whether I want to use countersink rivets in this or not. The heads of the number 4 rivets are going to stick up proud of this anyway, so the number 3s aren't going to stick up that much more. But I think I'll use countersink rivets anyway. Flathead rivets. I think I'll use flathead rivets on that. The next thing to do is to make this cutout in here. And I like this because where that flap hinge went through there, the bottom of this, where it's cut out right on the bend, and that was pretty rough down there. So this will improve that quite a bit. Well, I took this doubler down to the shop and dug out my rotor-broach kit and hogged out this hole here. And then I got my nibbler and cleaned it out to the line that I'd made. So now I'll take files and clean that hole out and deburr it and everything and smooth it all out. I was going to bring my rotor-broach kit up here to use it to drill the holes out up here, but I forgot that it takes a 1/2 inch chuck or better to turn that thing, and so it's just as well to use it down there in the shop where I can use the drill press on it. Next one of these I build, I'll just go ahead and take it down to the shop and hog that hole out with the rotor-broach, and then I'll go ahead and bring it up here and finish it out with the nibbler and the files and stuff like that. So I thought I had a chainsaw file in here, but all I got is this little Swiss file. So anyway, this round one will get the corners cleaned out and radius. Okay, I got that nailed together with Clecos. That's what it's going to look like. I think that's going to work out pretty good. I got one hole here that I pre-drilled for a rivet that's not for one of the hold down rivets. It's not going to work on this because it's too close to this tab on this hinge. So there's a little bit of flexibility in this thing for mounting it up to the spar. Be good, I think. And then one of these rivets that goes into this hinge actually goes into one of the ribs, the tail end of the ribs on the wing. At least it was in there, so we'll have to leave one of them out. I figure out which one of that is, but I think it's the outside one here that was through the rib. Oh, I just mocked that up on here, and sure enough, the outside rivet on this hinge tab here on this side is going to be the one that goes into that rib right there. Well, that's going to work pretty good. Oh, I suppose I better coat that with this green primer, just like I did here. Because if I don't, then the fabric, I've got to glue the fabric down here and stick that on there. And if I use zinc chromate primer, just a spray can primer, it's liable to pull loose from there with the glue when I put the fabric on there. Okay, well that's fun. That's fun seeing it go back together a little bit. I've got the hole lined up here in this outboard aileron rib. The holes there that were already in there, those are lined up. And some of these other holes don't quite line up the way they did. It's alright if I put new holes in there because those doggone screws were loose. I mean, they were tight, but the holes were enlarged because when I wanted to take those screws out, they wouldn't come out unless I got in behind them and pushed them out from the back as I was unthreading them from the front. So, alright, cool. Well, this is the inboard false spar. And this would be the center This would be the center hinge for the aileron. And here's the inboard hinge for the aileron. I've got the doublers made for those, both of those. So I got to figure out whether I think I'm gonna paint these, but I'm gonna get them all finished first. So I've still got to do one for the outboard flap false spar, and that one's going to be different. These ones are all the same. I got a little 1/2 inch overlap here past the bend. I think this section here is 2 3/8, and then it's 3.5 inches wide. This patch is 3.5 inches wide, which covers all the holes for the rivets for the hinge and gives me some good riveting positions for holding the patch on there. And this one I can just go ahead and rivet it all together with the hinges in there and everything. The outboard one I have to leave one rivet out because that gets riveted right to the bottom of that one rib. I'll put this one aside over here out of the way and get that outboard flap false spar out. Here's the outboard flat false spar, and so that one's quite a bit different shape here. It's just got a flat and then a kind of a rounded shape down here. It doesn't have that bend in it that the other two hinges do. Well, it can be kind of difficult sometimes to figure out where. I drew a line on here and I was just using a pencil, but that line doesn't show up very well, especially I've got this plastic coating on here and it doesn't show up very well on that, and then the glare and everything from the lights in there. One of the things you can do is take a pair of shears like this and just make a little cut right there, and that side will go down. Well, you want to do the same thing on this side, but see, if I make these same shears on this side, then this cut will go up. But if I take a pair of left-hand shears and put on there, put it right on that line, and all it takes is just a touch like that, and then I can take this and slide it in the shear and pull it back, and these two little ears right here will hook on the table. It'll stop and it'll line up perfectly then with the blade. I just stick this right in here because I got a little block right here to give me a 90, but it's not accurate, so that gives me a good cut. I set this up with my square. Now I get a perfectly square cut. Now I got two reference edges that I can work off of. So I think I want to do this the same as I did before. That was 3.5. 3.5. Three and a half. Now I do the same thing. And if I keep my working side out, I don't have to go around and fetch it because I got my stupid shear back here against the wall, and every time I cut something off, if I have my working side on the other side, then I got to crawl up on the bench and crawl around there and get it. So now I want 2 11/16. And I'll nip off the corners of this and smooth everything up. Okay, so now this one has got to be fit in here a little different than the other one did. Now this is soft enough material that I could just go ahead and bend this in here, but I'm going to go ahead and run it through the roller just a little bit there. Just a little bit more. Okay, that's a pretty good fit like that. Gotta figure out a hole pattern. Well, I'm gonna draw outline of this cutout. Draw where these holes on there so I don't draw drill holes there, and then figure out a rivet pattern. Now I take this one down to the shop and cut out that opening for the hinge. Oh, I better deburr the insides of these holes there, and actually they don't have any burrs on them. I'm not sure anyway. Well, that one is done. He said that one's going to go on the inside, but it'll be riveted on from the outside here. Everything's ready to go on that one. Of course, like I said, I don't have the holes in it for the bracket here, but I won't know where that's going to go until I get it mounted up on there, on the wing. So now what I'm going to do is I'll paint these. I got the paint out, but I had it in the refrigerator overnight, so it's cold. Well, I'll clean these up and get them ready to paint. I'm warming the paint up now, but I think I'll go. I've got that little fabric former or whatever that's called. I've got it in some paint thinner. I think I'll go clean it up and wash it down and start getting it ready to paint too. As long as I got the paint out, I might as well paint all the pieces that go on there. Go do that. I got those doublers all painted up. I did them one at a time, and then I hung them up on the wing in the relative position of where they go, so I didn't get them mixed up. Well, I just came up and put this one on here, and that's going to work out pretty good. Couldn't get my hand squeezers in there to do the ones on the face here. And this part, they just won't go over this edge, this lip right here. So I've got to use the rivet gun for that, and it's midnight. There's a fella upstairs sleeping, so I don't want to wake him up. So I guess I'll wait till tomorrow and nail those together then, and then that paint will be a little bit harder on it by tomorrow anyway, so that won't hurt anything. It's 4 or 5 hours since I sprayed those, so the paint's still soft on them. Anyway, that is looking pretty good. I put them in here with some flathead rivets. Pretty good. Those are going to be flush there like that. And of course we'll have round head rivets go in these holes here where the hinge fits on there. I'll get the whole plate on there first, and then I'll put the hinge on there and it'll be ready to go on. Well, I just got them held on with the Clecos right now.